artist.
Who?
The guy that did my makeup, which is why I was a little bit late.
Cool. Cool. It's actually funny. There's a comparison. I spoke to Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails the other day, who has also had like a kind of a long break since the last thing that he's been up to. So what have you been up to in the break?
Well, literally after the Elvis Costello record, that's when I pulled down the shutters and went on. I mean, I carried on living in Ladbroke Grove, but I then set about picking the guitar up, actually learning the guitar. Then that led me to bass. I already knew keyboards. Then I bought all the technical equipment and built a studio, just a little studio in my home, learned how to work all of that so I could engineer myself. All the time writing many songs. And although, you know, I can sum it all up in a couple of sentences, it actually took quite a few years to go from scratch, where you don't even know a bar chord, to the point where you're playing everything yourself and engineering everything yourself. And not just that, but you have a collection of songs that you feel good enough about to then take into a recording studio and master as a record to sell. So that's actually quite a journey. Because I'd never played guitar in Tranvision. I'd owned the guitar, but I'd never once, you know, I'd tinkered around with David Bowie riffs, showing off, but not really sitting down and writing songs. So
what drew you to that, to doing it all yourself, engineering and producing and getting stuff down all yourself?
A long process, basically, from, I would say, halfway through Tranvision, maybe, that there was a whisper in the back of my mind, I need to be the songwriter, through to the end of Tranvision, culminating with Elvis, where I knew for sure that I could no longer sing other people's songs, that it wasn't truly representative of my quirks or particular likes and dislikes of music. You know, certain musicians, there are many similarities between all of us, but every single guitarist plays guitar slightly differently, the way their body rhythms work. The same thing when you write a melody, or the same way if you phrase a lyric. And ultimately I knew that for me to get something out of it, it had to come from me, and actually, to be the best I could be, the songs had to be my own, because those songs because they were coming out of me, would truly represent me, rather than me singing in the style of for another songwriter.
Sure. So I mean, how come it's Racine and not Wendy James solo?
I've always been a band person. In my blood, it's to be with a gang rather than... I have great admiration for people like Joni Mitchell or Amy Mann or solo female singer-songwriters. Personally, I didn't want that label anywhere near me, and even though I set about and recorded this album and played everything myself, I knew the day would come when I would reach out and form a band around me. So now I've found two of them, and we're a three-piece, but it's quite possible that it could end up being a five-piece.
Okay.
And just Racine on the marquee of a show looks so much better than, you know, Racine allows for all the massive creativity, rather than Wendy James is a very linear description. If it was Wendy James, you'd expect me to stand on a stage almost with an acoustic guitar and sing lovelorn ballads, and that's just not my thing. Sure.
I mean, and also, I mean, what do you think people's expectations are of you coming back? And you're absolutely right, you know, with the name, you always expect sort of like singer-songwritery. Was that something you're kind of obviously keen to err away from?
It's just not, it wouldn't be natural for me to be a female singer-songwriter. I never buy records that are all about heartbreak. I don't care whether it's Roy Orbison or, you know, it's just the old ballad heart. If the Stones are doing a ballad, the chances are there'll be some kind of dirt in there that makes it savoury to my taste buds. But just singing along woefully isn't my thing.
So what's the difference then between you then and now, and link to that the music then and now?
Well, the big difference is Nick Sayer wrote Tranvision Vamp's music, and I write Racine's music. And obviously the thread of continuity is it's me and my personality, but my personality is somewhat developed in these interim years as well. So, and now with the added wholeness of me being the songwriter, my attitude is not just a balls to the wall attitude that it was in Tranvision Vamp, which was a lot of, adrenaline and testosterone, really. The attitude comes from deep within, because these songs are of me, so it's non-negotiable.
And so what was your aim with this whole project? What was the purpose? What are you hoping for with it, with Racine?
Well, I've got what I already hoped for, which is a record that's actually on the shelves, that's untampered with by anybody but my own hands. I mean, that's all I wanted to do, and all I continue to want to do as a musician and a songwriter is for me to have the ideas, me to record the ideas, and for it to still end up on the streets being those same ideas, rather than it pass through the hands of a board of censors, musical censors, like, oh, the bass could be a bit louder, or what about another chorus at the end to get it hooky. So as a purely creative aim, it's for the labours of your work to remain untouched by others.
And how would you describe the music to the uninitiated ear, if you were trying to sort of describe what's in there?
Well, it doesn't sound like anyone else. It sounds really, if you knew me, that's what my music sounds like. If you listen to my music, you would know Wendy, because it is all my tastes. I mean, there are certain things I'm naturally going to do, which is loop beats and, use sequences and loops to make the low end of my tracks, because I always relate to a hip-hop beat that's programmed or sample loops than live splashy drumming. Now what I've done is I've got a real drummer in the band, and he plays off of the loops. So he's like live overdubbing over the loops. So there are loops that we bring, and then Ray brings the real feel. So you're getting two, and it makes an incredible sound when you've got only machine. There are certain drum sounds that you can really only get off of machines, like sub-bass kick drums and things like this, and I love that sound. And there's no drum kit in the world that can make that sound. It's a man-made sound. But then you add live drums onto that, and then the thing has a little bit of movement and breath in it. And so you've got the groove, but you've also got the hardcore kick of hip-hop. So, what was the question?
It was, how would you describe it?
How would I describe it? Yeah. Well, I've thought of the way I'm describing it, okay, this is to really get inside my head, but I'm calling it Godard rock, because I believe the way I make music is very similar to the way, I'm not saying it, but very similar to the way that Jean-Luc Godard made his movies, stylistically, because when he makes a movie, he doesn't put a whole load of falsehoods in there that you would typically get from a Hollywood movie, or in the analogy, let's say a big production $2 million album by somebody who has 1 million songwriters writing for them. It's the antithesis of that. So it's very, let's say, grainy look at music, but there are most serious messages in there, but they're completely unpompous, because it's all with humor and style and wit, rather than this is what I think is wrong. Because many times you can watch a Godard movie and maybe you just think it, like in Breathless, it's just a guy and a girl, and maybe they'll get together and maybe they won't, and oh, she shoots him at the end and something's going down with a robbery. But also the way Godard shoots is he lets you see the background of the environment that helps you know what's going on at that time in that place, which is it's almost documentary of the period of time. And I think that's what my songs are like, because when I write lyrics, I write stories, and I even write in the voice of the characters of the stories. So if it's about, there's a song on the album called Life Goes On, and it really was about the plight of the migrant workers during the American 1930s Great Depression. And if you watch enough Terrence Malick movies, or Days of Heaven, or Grapes of Wrath, or these things, you just, somehow it soaks into your blood. And same way Bob Dylan would write a lyric in the voice of another person. Or all the old blues guys, you make stories with your music, and that is the politicals. So you're not getting bashed over the head with something black and white. You get taken to the place, and you feel, and you start relating to the place that the song or the movie is talking about, and that's what gives you a realistic impression of what it must have been like, which is therefore the message. Because this is how we suffered, this is how we found happiness, this is how we survived, this is how... But it's not just this is what I think's wrong with the world, you bastards, and you know, it's a little more eloquent than that.
Sure, well, I was going to say, I've noticed, is it W13, how do you pronounce it?
West 13.
West 13, okay. In that song, you named Hunter S is in there.
Hunter Thompson.
Hunter, yeah, and there are a couple others in there.
Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac.
Of course.
And these are all people, well, not so much Ginsberg, because he's a poet, but his poetry does the same thing. But certainly Hunter Thompson, you know, you don't have to go to Las Vegas to understand what Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas must have goddamn felt like.
All Puerto Rico from Undied.
Yes, and so the way he writes and the way Kerouac writes, you don't necessarily have to go on an East Coast to West Coast road trip to understand, but they take you to the place. And so that's what inspires me. Or if I hear language in I love local language. So if I hear a Southerner, I'm talking Southern American, you know, the way a black girl would talk down in Alabama is going to be entirely different to me, the white girl from London. But I can imagine her essence, and if I use the way she talks, then I can take me and you there to her life and tell the story that we're telling. Does that...
In terms of the industry, and funny about, I mean, you've been in the game a while. How are you finding it coming back and so on?
Well,
you've got friends in the game. You know how the industry works a bit.
Yeah, but I don't really, I'm a little bit too busy to worry about things like that. So this whole journey it's been a lot. I've been working my arse off, but it's been very, very simple because I just haven't done anything I didn't want to do. And every time I set about doing something, I just did it to the best of my abilities. So I finally end up with a record that I'm proud of, that is being released in a way that I'm proud of, and somehow or other...
Okay, go for it.
Hi, this is Wendy James, talking about my new band Racine, and you're watching clickmusic.com?
That's wicked. No, it's just Click Music.
Okay.
That's wicked. Thanks, Wendy. That's grand.